Good evening, everyone. Good evening. It's great to see you. I want to thank everybody for coming this evening. If you're just walking in, there's plenty of seats, so please find a place where you are comfortable. This is our second edition of our plugged-in parents, plugged-in families, and I see many familiar faces that had come out for our first session. So thank you again so much for being here. My name is Michael Breggy, and I am your superintendent, and it is a pleasure for me to do a couple of introductions before we start. This evening, we are so privileged to have a wonderful keynote speaker who I was just speaking with, who is just traveling all across the country, and her name is Anya Kamenetz, and she is NPR's educational correspondent. She has a brand new book, and it's outside here that you can get, and she is happy to sign it for you, called The Art of Screen Time, How Your Family Can Balance Digital Media and Real Life. This is a book that's garnered high praise. I spent a lot of time looking and researching some of the work that Anya has done, and what was really impressive to me was it wasn't just that she was specializing in technology and screen time. She has quite a voice in the educational community, and so it's been fun following her on Twitter and following some of the other educational initiatives that she's been at and things that she's been talking about. So she's a wonderful speaker. We're going to bring her up shortly. She is from Louisiana. She has 2 girls and her husband. They live in New York, so she's come all the way here to see you and talk to you. Very glad to have her. She's a Yale graduate, and she's going to talk a lot about her experiences in her book and about the screen time, real life technology, and how to implement and make those decisions in your household, just like we do in our classrooms. Before we have Anya come up, I do want to introduce you to somebody very special. Bernadette Lucas is our Director of Technology. And I want to say just a couple things about Bernadette really quickly. As a superintendent, you're always looking for somebody that can bring a wealth of experience to their position. And there's an interesting thing about the leadership aspect of people in technology. And many times we get people in technology that are so technical and they have that digital experience. But what's hard to find is somebody that actually has that teaching experience and that also brings principal experience. And so we're so fortunate here in our school district to have somebody that has teaching experience and also experience being a principal, and all wrapped up together for that leadership piece to bring to the district office. And it's very rare to find somebody that has all of those qualities, but we have somebody like that. And I'm so fortunate to work with her every single day. So I'd like to turn the program over to Mrs. Bernadette Lucas, our Director of Technology.
Good evening, everyone. This makes me really sad when no one says good evening. Thank you so much for being here. I have to say a couple of things. I want to thank Dr. Breggy, who creates the fertile ground for us to do this work in. The second thing I want to share is that this event, as you can see, you could tell from the moment you walked in, took a lot of planning, couldn't you? I had nothing to do with it. I have an incredible group of partners in my coaches and the parents with whom we work to make this happen. The tech team that I work with every single day, and I'm going to ask all of those people to come up in just a second. But I think it's really, really important to note that tonight came out of parent information and desire. So we had 3 amazing moms who came to us and said, Bernadette, well, when I say us, the royal us, Bernadette, our parents are looking for this, this, and this in their parent education around technology use at school and at home. I think what we did right was listening to them and reframing our parent education to meet your needs based on your feedback and the feedback of your children. So I'd like to bring those 3 moms to the stage. They're not in here? Of course they're not. Thanks, Bahar. Before I bring the moms up, I'd like to bring our coaches up. So if the 4 of them could come up, Elisa, Carla, Ann, and Lisa. as they come up, I want to share with you that them being here, being on staff at the sites they're at, came out of parent involvement. We had a lot of conversations with our community around what is needed to make this work, instructional technology work in classrooms and be well integrated. And this amazing team of coaches has done just that. And they do deserve a huge round of applause. If you wouldn't mind giving that to me. And so somewhere around here is Fidel Coronel. Is he hiding somewhere? Probably taking care of business. Is that you, Fidel? So that's Horace Mann's IT specialist, who is amazing. And in the back is Anthony Talbert, who's our senior systems engineer and project manager for the district. And I'm just waiting for our 3 parents to come in. And when they come in, they really deserve a big round of applause too. I basically just got to say yes to things. Are they trying to hide from us, Dustin?
Yes, I think so.
I know they are, but we're not going to let them. Bahar, are they coming?
Oh, she's here.
Oh, where's Romy hiding?
She's right here.
Oh, there's Romy. Okay, so Bahar, Kim, and Romy, I know you're going to be upset with me for this, but can you please come up, please? I'm begging you. Is that all I'm going to get? Okay. Okay, they're just gonna, I'll take it, okay? So this team put this amazing event together, and I'm honored to introduce them. So thank you, ladies, very much for everything you do.
Can you say which school?
Oh, yes.
Only one school,
Yes.
not the other.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Elisa Rosen. I'm the Tectosa at Overdale.
I'm Ann Klein. I'm the Tectosa and history teacher over at the high school.
Carla Mulholland, Tectosa, Beverly Vista.
Lisa Beeler, I'm the Tectosa here at Horace Mann, and Carla and Elisa and I all work to support Hawthorne and the intern.
Okay, so without any further ado, Anya, we'd like to invite you to the stage. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thanks, Brenda, and thank you, everyone, all the people who were involved in putting this together. We went through a lot of awesome conversations about how to have the most interactive and engaging use of our time. So I just want to explain that I'm going to be presenting to you for a period of time, maybe around 40 minutes, and then we're going to break off and do what's called a pair and share. Do you guys have the handouts that were in your seats? Okay, so there's some questions for reflection, and what I really want to do during the pair and share is kind of reflect on what you've heard, talk to your neighbor, and then come up with really great questions, because we're going to throw back then to a really great Q&A, where we hopefully get all of our questions answered. And then then there's a giveaway, and also I'll be signing books for anyone who cares to get a book and learn more about all of this stuff. So how does that sound? I think it's a good lesson plan. Lesson plans never go exactly as they're planned, but it's a good starting point. I'm really grateful to, oh, please don't, the, yeah, great, sorry, I didn't hear. All right, just a little bit of technical stuff here, as always. Okay. All right, so my beat for the last decade or so has been really the future of learning. As a reporter for NPR now, I used to work for Fast Company, and I've written for a wide range of outlets and also appeared in video and on radio. The future of learning being not just technology, but the changing pace of life in America and the world, and how we bring our kids up through that. And so when I had my own kids starting 6 years ago, I became kind of puzzled and then confused and then really just like stymied by the disconnect between the conversation that we are having about kids and screens at school and the one that we're having about kids and screens at home. Because when we talk about kids and screens at school, I mean, all the wonderful things you saw up in the slides before I got here about how great it's going to be to have access to technology, to use it in all these ways, to get ready for the 21st century, to compete with the robots, to compete with Japan or other countries. But when you get to kids and screens at home, the number one message that parents hear is that they should be monitoring, moderating, limiting their kids' time. And it just seems like such a weird disconnect. We have so much anxiety about screens and technology, digital media, but we also see this huge promise. And I set out as a journalist, but also as a mother, to figure out if there's any way I could sort of parse through what do we really know, what's really going on in a baby's brain when they pick up an iPad and start swiping it, what's going on in their brain when their mother is looking at their phone while the kid is trying to get their attention, and then what's going on in a teenager's brain, and all through the way. So what does the research say? What does it not say? And how can we make sense of it and hopefully make better choices as we navigate this alongside our children? Because I think, like many other facets of modern parenting with technology is something that we don't have the rule book for. At least we haven't had it yet. Our grandparents don't have grandparents don't have the wisdom necessarily to get through it, and a lot of new situations are coming up, so we need guidance, and I think the best way to get that guidance is to kind of talk to each other, have an open dialogue about it. So the dictum that I came up, I boiled down all the research, dozens of experts, I've surveyed over 500 families, and I followed Michael Pollan, the food writer. He wrote, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. And I came up with the slogan, enjoy screens, not too much, mostly together. So we'll handle each of those one at a time. What does it mean to enjoy screens? I think when we get into the discourse about kids and digital media or balance, our mind immediately goes to the negative, and that's kind of just how people are. It's also in some ways how parents are. But I think it's important to kind of stipulate that digital media is in our lives for a reason, for a purpose. We're turning to it with intention. And there are certain purposes of digital media that are quite positive that we would like to emphasize and model for our kids so that they emphasize them as well. So one example from my own life, just a tiny example, when we were reading my older daughter, The Secret Garden as a bedtime story on paper, but that book is written in this incredible Yorkshire dialect, this English dialect, and it's really hard to pronounce. And so we said, hey, why don't we go on YouTube and look up Yorkshire accent? And so we got this video. I really should put the video in the presentation, but it's just this adorable little girl who looks just like my daughter, speaking in her Yorkshire accent and interviewed by her uncle. And it's the cutest thing you've ever seen. And it augmented our understanding of the book and the regional place where it was set, and helped us with just a little bit of digital extras, helped her get drawn into the story. And it's really just a tiny example of how digital media can play a positive role in a very, average, everyday parenting experience. Another touchstone for me as I think about what screens can be or could be in our kids' lives is the great Seymour Papert. So Papert was he was a lot of things actually, but he studied with Jean Piaget, the great developmental psychologist in Geneva, Switzerland. And then he went with Marvin Minsky to open one of the first artificial intelligence labs at MIT. So he was a cognitive scientist, he was interested in thinking, and he was interested in how computers thought and how children thought. And with this incredible cross-current of interests, he ended up doing so many things. He inspired the One Laptop per Child project, he inspired Lego Mindstorms, that's actually written, Mindstorms is named after his work, the robotics toys. He created the first visual programming language for children to use. He created these things called robot turtles that kids could program. And he advocated for the first laptop programs in schools. In the state of Maine, where he lived, they were the first state to adopt a one laptop per student program. And in one of the speeches that he gave to kind of advocate for this, he said, why do you think children should have laptops? Well, the simple reason is that I have one. And they're the prime instrument for our days for intellectual work. And if you don't think the work of children is intellectual, then we have a really big problem, essentially. So the idea here is that kids with the ability, the empowered to explore with appropriate kinds of technology can learn kind of like native speakers, can learn the language of mathematics, the language of computers, and the language of coding, and really be empowered to build the next generation of software. And that is a very, it's a lofty vision. It's far from what we often see, but I think it's important to keep in mind as an ideal, the ideal that our kids can be and often should be using technology to explore and to create, as well as to consume. And then yet another kind of academic touchstone for me as I think about the positive uses of media is this work, hanging out, messing around, and geeking out. And this is an ethnography of what teenagers are up to online. And it kind of puts it into these categories, this idea that kids are, you know, they're often using media to connect with their peers, as well as people across the country, across the world. They're often using it to geeking out, meaning like doing a deep dive on a very intense interest that they may not be able to pursue elsewhere. And also messing around, meaning not, you know, getting up to things we don't want them to get up to, which is also part of what they do, but also diving under the hood of technology and kind of coding and remixing and taking videos and cutting them up and changing web design and even just cutting, you know, editing photographs and doing other things that kids do when they really are encouraged to dive into the media and build more skills. When we think about these positive visions, it's really important to think about the positive visions and also balance it with the idea that, you know, there's such a thing as too much. So we want to be using technology for these purposes, for creation, for connection, for discovery, and also just for enjoyment. That's important too. But we also want to have not too much. So why is it that, I'm going to see if I can deal with the way that this looks right now, because it's a little bit weird to me. So the research on technology and kids really reads like a list of the biggest, scariest things that keep parents up at night. And that includes things like obesity, things like sleep issues, anxiety, depression, problematic levels of use. But what we find across the board is, first of all, there's a lot less research than we would like. So the last major piece of federally funded research on children and media was titled Television and Behavior, and it was published by the National Institutes of Mental Health in 1982. So there's a vast lack of research on things other than television and a vast lack of research that is experimental design. You can't take 2 3-year-olds and assign one to watch 15 hours a day of television and the other one to have no television. You can't do that ethically. There's no way to expose kids to things that are risky. You know, in a scientific study, it's very hard to do that. We also don't have we haven't had the budget to do longitudinal studies. And a lot of the studies on research between the interactions between kids and screens is really confounded because the kinds of parents that have the resources and the competence and the ability to really strictly limit their kids' media time probably have other options as well, other advantages as well. They have access to high-quality childcare, lots of places for their kids to play in their neighborhood. You can see where I'm going with this. There's a real issue with causation versus correlation when we look at a lot of relationships in research around media and kids. That said, I kind of separate out the research in my book on things that we have the most evidence for, and then things that we have less conclusive evidence, but it's still worrisome enough to pay attention to. And the most evidence side of the board, I would say at the top of the list is sleep. Sleep researchers know this really well. They've been studying it for a long time, especially with the small screens that are close to your face and shining directly in your eyes with the blue light. It keeps kids up. It makes the sleep more shallow. This leads to them to sort of regress in their emotional development, to have less ability to tolerate frustration. It's harder to concentrate in school. And we see this a lot. We see bedtimes are getting later. Kids are sleeping less. And we obviously see it with parents as well. So if there's one take home based on the research that I would say is it's really good to have a rule about no screens in the bedroom, no screens as part of the bedtime routine, and no screens for an hour, up to an hour before bed. The second big area of research where we have a lot of evidence from television is the link between screens and obesity. And this one is kind of interesting because it's not necessarily that kids who sit in front of the TV longer, it's not necessarily the couch potato hypothesis that they're not moving their bodies as much. What researchers believe instead is that a lot of it might have to do with the messages that they're getting when they're watching, a lot of messages about junk food, messages about their favorite characters selling junk food. And there's been some leveling, and the other part about it is possibly just mindless eating, like snacking while you're watching. And interestingly enough, there's been a little bit of a leveling off in the obesity rates for children in the last few years. And some researchers speculate that the intrusion of the small screen has been helpful for two reasons. One is that there's possibly less candy advertising and junk food advertising in the on-demand video world, although it depends if you're using YouTube versus Netflix. But also, it's harder to snack while you're holding the small device. So sleep and obesity are pretty well founded. The rest of the field of research has this issue. So I went to a really big conference on children and screens. It was brought together neuroscientists, pediatricians, ophthalmologists, psychiatrists, psychologists, and one really respected researcher, Patty Valkenburg, got up and she said, you know, media affects research. We see that the media has a strong impact. We see that it's pervasive. But in study after study, we find only very small effects, only small impacts. Small, almost inconclusive evidence on things like attention deficit disorder, cognitive development, behavioral issues, emotional regulation. Why do we think this is? And her theory, and that a lot of people in the field believe, is there's something called differential susceptibility. And differential susceptibility basically means some of our kids are more prone to problems than others, and you don't know who they are before you expose them. And another way of stating this is the dandelions versus orchids theory. The idea being, most of our kids are averagely resilient, and they're doing just fine in the media environment that they're in, which is a lot of media. Most kids are getting a lot of media. Let's just stipulate that. It's about 2.5 hours per day, ages 0 to 8. Once they get a little bit older, they're on their own devices. Their use patterns look a lot more like adults, which if you just tick over the last 24 hours in your mind and how often when you were awake did you have a screen on you or near you, tweens and teens kind of edge up toward that level, the 8-hour a day, 9-hour day, 10-hour day, 11-hour day per level, which is really kind of remarkable. But most of our kids are doing okay, you know, dependent on other factors in their lives. And so there's a subset of kids, the orchids, right? They might need more careful attention, more careful handling, and when they're exposed to screens, they might be more prone to problems. And the problem is that those are exactly the kids who have like what I call a doomed romance with screens, so that they are potentially the ones that are the most drawn to the screens are exactly the ones that might have problems because of the screens. And oftentimes it's not a one-way causal effect, but it's kind of a two-way effect. It's a little bit of a cycle, and I want to explain what I mean by that. So some of these studies, for example, background television, which is very, very common, again, causes a very big drop in parent-child conversation. It basically interrupts people. It also interrupts children while they're playing. And this, in some children, can contribute to language delays. That's an example of something that's very, very common, and a small group of children does have problems with it because of it. Infants rated as harder to calm at 9 months were watching more television when they were 2 years old. This is a really interesting study done by Dr. Jenny Radesky. She's the lead writer of the American Academy of Pediatrics Media Guidance. And basically the idea here is, it's not that the kids were watching more television when they were babies and then they became harder to calm. It's that the children who were harder to calm, their parents ended up putting them in front of the TV more often. Maybe they were the ones that complained more when they turned the television off. Or maybe they had parents who were also kind of harder to, less emotionally regulated, and they needed a break more often, so they're putting the kids in front of the screens. So the relationship between behavior, for example, and television watching could be a two-way street. And then the third study here is just one example of many, many studies and research showing that children on the autism spectrum seem to have an affinity for screens, even at a very young age, and they tend to watch more television or more videos, more media than other children their age. And this differential susceptibility is a very interesting one because it's not saying that there's a causation happening here, but what it is saying is that there may be a crowding out or a displacement effect. That if you have a kid who is avoiding face-to-face contact or communication with people, but they prefer to interact with media, then if you're using that media to kind of get them through their day or to calm them down when they need to, some time alone, that maybe they're not maybe they're not learning other skills that they might need. Skills around, speaking and interacting, and skills around, emotional regulation. And this is an interesting parallel, I think, for a lot of, for all kids, not just kids who might have a neurological difference, that the screens are maybe they're not harmful in themselves, but you have to look at, on the way far margins of extreme amounts of use, what are they crowding out or what are they displacing? And so when you think about balance with media, it's not necessarily that it's bad in itself, it's just what else are you not doing? Are you not spending time face to face? Are you not spending time outside? And that kind of thing. I would also mention at the same time that there are others, advocates for people on the spectrum, who say that media can be helpful for them. It's more of an accommodation than it is something that's necessarily harmful. So there's many schools of thought on that particular point. You know, all of that said, so we talked about behavioral issues, we talked about anxiety, we talked about ADHD a little bit, about behavior, you know, harder to calm, kids on the spectrum. There's beginning to be a lot more conversation around whether we would call something addiction when it comes to kids who really can't seem to put down the screens. And what this is, it's most often boys, it's very often video games, and it's co-occurring with other psychiatric issues most of the time. And those other issues would include ADHD, they include being on the spectrum, they include depression, anxiety. So it often, almost never is problematic media use occurring all by itself as an issue to address. But that said, researchers are starting to develop this scale, and they based it on a question, similar kind of questionnaire around gambling. And it's about your relationship to the behavior. And so these are questions that were asked of parents of children ages 4 to 11, and they were correlated with other issues that the kids faced in their lives. And it was, you know, agree or disagree. My child, it's hard for my child to stop using screens. When my child has a bad day, screen media is the only thing that seems to help. My child sneaks around and deceives me to use screens. They become frustrated when I take it away. It causes problems at home. It causes problems at school, with friendships. And they have a threshold effect. They seem to want more and more. And this isn't, I mean, I'm not trying to armchair diagnose anybody here, but just to show that, you know, oftentimes when you see something that appears to be a problem, you know, there very well may be a problem. And we don't need necessarily the clinical definition of addiction in order to have something that needs to be addressed, whether with therapy or, you know, kind of some kind of behavioral modification program, or just with a conversation, depending on, you know, where we are with it. So that's kind of the not too much. Those are the reasons behind the not too much. Or this is what not too much, what too much looks like. And I want to get to the mostly together, because this is a look about parents, it's about families. And I think the prime message here is that we have more influence than we think. Researchers look at parental mediation of kids from infants up to teenagers, and they see that, well, we have more influence on the environment when kids are younger. We continue to have influence. Not necessarily control, and influence and control are very different things, but we have influence over how our kids use media and how they interpret what they watch or what they're doing online. And the way that we can kind of use it, I think the best framework for thinking about how to use that influence is this one, which is a framework of parenting styles. It's pretty common across the board, not just with media. And this is looking at parenting styles from the dimensions of warmth and structure, right? So you have you know, someone who is very unforgiving, has a lot of rules, but isn't very cold, isn't very warm or connected with their kids. That's the authoritarian style. Someone who is very, very warm and loving, but not necessarily so good with structure or rules or consequences. That's called permissive. And parents who are just kind of like checked out, not really paying attention one way or the other, not positive, not negative, that's called permissive. And then parents who excel, you know, both in the warmth and the structure is known as authoritative. And I think what's interesting about this is that screens tend to be a little bit of an exception sometimes for parents who might be, you know, different in other ways. You may be like very warm and structured in some ways, but you're like extremely structured and cold around screens, or you might be really permissive, or a lot of parents are very checked out because guess what, we have our own screen time habits and issues, and most parents, I surveyed over 500 parents, only 3% of them claim to strictly limit their own use of technology around their kids. And so it's very, very hard to set a limit with your kids when you are also doing the same thing, and you're also checking your phone all the time, or you have a social media habit or addiction. And so a lot of times what needs to be done is kind of like a whole family reset, where we talk together about our values and about our rules, and we're on the same page holding each other accountable. Another reason that it can be hard for people's parenting styles with screens to be consistent with the rest of their parenting is that when you hold the line on things like bedtime or manners, you get a benefit immediately, right? It feels good when your kid says please. It feels good when your kid goes to bed on time. But when you hold the line on screens, you're like, in some ways families feel like they might be punishing themselves because the kid is deprived of something that they really, really love, and you don't get time to yourself that you used to use to do this or that because you're not parking the kid in front of the media. But be that as it may, you know, there are strategies that we can all use to kind of go onto a path of, if you would like to have more positive uses of media with your kids, if you'd like to have less negative uses of media, or you see some of these negative impacts, some of these things ring a bell around the problematic levels of use, or if you suspect that your kid might be an orchid type of kid, there's lots of strategies that you can use. And none of these will be kind of earth-shattering, but it might be useful to look at the pieces of the puzzle together. So again, like I surveyed all these families, the most commonly mentioned strategy that parents use is time. Something like an hour a day, and that's also present in the American Academy of Pediatrics recommendations as well. They talk about an hour a day for kids at least up to end of elementary school. It's clear, it's easy to understand, it makes it easier to enforce, although it's a little bit arbitrary, and it may not take into account the fact that there's different kinds of media use that may be more or less beneficial. It's also hard to square up with a lot of homework in certain schools, especially when the kids get older. Occasion and priority, again, pretty clear and easy to understand, even for very young kids. If you say only on the weekends, or not at the table, or not in the car, these are things that can become part of your family culture. And a habit is a lot easier than a rule, because a rule is something that you're always pushing back on and enforcing, but a habit is just like brushing your teeth. Hopefully you get to a point with your kids where you don't have to remind them. I hope you get to a point with your kids where you don't have to remind them anymore to brush their teeth. And they take it over for themselves, and it just becomes a habit. Content, you can't, strategies on screen time have to include some consideration of content. This is different for different kids. Some kids are really sensitive to certain kinds of content. I know parents that have made rules based on behavior or certain kinds of language that they see in their kids. I know parents that are interested in promoting certain kinds of educational use, and they might use that as a carrot versus a stick to say, you can have some extra screen time if you use it to work on that app that we talked about that I like. And then these two strategies with the red stars, they can trip you up a little bit. So I see some parents making rules around reactively, because they see negative behavior in their kids. And I had a mom today who told me a story about their kid had they were playing Fortnite starting like way late at night and then early in the morning, and then they went to baseball and had a huge meltdown at baseball practice. And so that was the cue for her to kind of yank it away. And that, I think it's important for parents to be responsive and to make, you have to make decisions based on what you see to a certain extent. At the same time, then if you don't make clear, intentions in advance, then you are setting yourself up to be negotiating with your kid over a limit exactly when they're most upset. So thinking about, a way to have a proactive stance and to know that it's going to change, because our kids get older and their needs change over time. And then finally, the convenience issue. I see a lot of great parents, good friends of mine, who they are permitting the device, especially with young kids, because young kids, it feels like they need attention all the time. And so they're giving the device exactly when they need to do something, when they need to get dinner on the table or when they need to get dressed. And the problem with that is it's not inherently bad. It's not like you're going into bad dad debt if you do this. But the problem is it's not clear to the kid when you're saying no and when you're saying yes. And that is the cue for the kid to constantly pester you for the device all the time. And so if you're locked into that kind of cycle with your kids, I would urge you to consider something that's a little more structured, where you can point to the refrigerator or point to the timer and say, it's not Thursday at 8 o'clock, so I'm not giving you the device. But the pitfall, obviously, is that you have to stick to it, or you have to make another plan if you're using the device in that way. And then talking about strategies, we also need to have tools to enforce those strategies. I sort of lump them into like the physical tools and the digital or virtual tools. On the physical side of things, a timer is great, a kitchen timer. Giving kids a 5-minute warning, especially younger kids, can be really helpful for them to transition into the next activity. Using a chart, like a sticker chart, if you're using screen time as a reward, which I neither advocate nor criticize. I think it can be a good reward, but it's not great for everyone. Having passes, physical passes was something we used with my daughter when we were first starting out. We wanted her to have 3 iPad sessions a week, so we used a pass, and then we could take the pass away, or we could give her an extra pass, again, as a reward. A father called into a radio show I was on and had this brilliant idea of, he has 2 daughters with iPads, and they get 1 charge per week on the iPad. So this is great, right? It's just brilliant. So he held on to the power cords, and it's their charge to use as they see fit through the course of the week. Yeah, and then there's all these apps. None of the apps work perfectly, and it's kind of by design. But just to go through, I mean, there's So things like Circle, which I think is actually a Disney product. Moment is Circle, so that's something that is about the Wi-Fi and what devices are on the Wi-Fi. Moment is an app that's about the phones and what phones are in your family and how much each person is using. Google Family Link. Amazon also has family controls, parental controls around the Kindle Fire and around both content, as well as they have a very fine grain where you can kind of like make them read for a certain amount of time before they can watch a video. So it's like, if you like to turn all the dials and the knobs, this is like a good one for you. Unglue, I think, also has a lot of behavioral modification stuff in there too, which some parents really like. And then, but your number one screen time tool has to be conversation, and no matter the age of your kids, because if we want to be authoritative parents, we can't just be setting arbitrary limits. Our kids have to understand how it relates to our values as a family, what we're trying to accomplish, what we like and what we don't like about what they're doing, or how it's affecting the rest of the family. And I think there's always, if you give your kids a chance to be involved in the problem-solving process, and this again also involves us being honest about our own parenting habits and how technology fits into the overall family picture, and asking our kids to hold us accountable, which is an incredible way of kind of leveling the playing field and being really honest with them, that they'll surprise you with the solutions that they come up with. I'll just say that. So content, there's a lot of different ways of looking at content, and it's a really, really big question. I think having a robust dialogue amongst yourselves as parents, your friends know, they know a little bit more about what your kid really wants and is into, but these are some, Common Sense Media, I definitely advise looking at their reviews. They review almost every piece of media that's out there, whether it's new movies or books or video games or apps. I suggest when you're looking at the app world that you look for the ad-free, subscription-based, pay up front. These are the kind of ways to get a little bit more privacy, a little bit less upselling and ads that make some popular kids apps are almost unusable because of the amount of ads and in-app purchases they have. This idea of digital sandboxes and digital toys, I would just encourage, so not everything that's on an iPad or a tablet is a game. So interestingly enough, right? So a game is a thing that has points, it has outcomes, it has a score board, it has leveling up, and it has all these different tricks that are exactly paced to get you hooked in and get you excited and make it so addictive, and that's why everybody's playing Candy Crush and everybody's playing Tetris and Freestyle and Solitaire and all the way back down the line. Not everything that's on a tablet, though, is a game. Some things are just environments. They're just places that you can kind of get into and explore, and they don't have one particular outcome. Minecraft in creative mode is a really great example. Painting apps are a great example, or even just the camera app on the phone, very simple way of exploring. That's the first one that I introduced my toddler to. Whenever we take the phone out, she thinks it's the baby, because she just wants to look at pictures and take pictures. And this is something that's kind of self-limiting, like unlike videos of, babies and puppies on YouTube, which can go on literally forever. Looking at herself is something that wears off after 5-10 minutes, which I think is a perfectly fine amount of time for a toddler, and I think that pediatricians would agree. So digital sandboxes, digital toys, TinyBop and Toca Boca are both makers of that kind of app for young children. Minecraft is an example. Scratch Junior is an example. I think, audiobooks and podcasts are another kind of alternative for if you want some of that, like on a car trip or plugged in time without being totally plugged in. I think that's another good thing to add to your repertoire. And the kids should see this, and Brain Pop are both sources of videos. So a lot of times when I talk about like discovery with your kids, you have a question and you want to Google the question or ask Siri the question or ask Alexa the question. And those are two sources of of really great informational videos for kids. Actually, the kids should see this as also just like media not necessarily made with kids in mind, but it's curated for kids, and it's really amazing stuff out there. And just alternatives to places to go if you don't always want to go to YouTube. And so that's kind of the mostly together, right? That as parents, we should be sharing some of our kids' screen time with them, and failing that, we should be at least talking to them about what they're doing online. And that can have a really powerful effect. So that, for example, one study showed that parents who had the porn talk with their kids in middle school, and that was simply just sharing their values, whatever they may be, around that kind of content, that those kids, when they got to college, they had a much more positive attitude about themselves and about their relationships. based on recalling having that conversation. And whether that is, it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg thing, right? Because it could be that those parents were just more confident or more able to have an open conversation, but it's a good thing to think about because that's one of the areas of the online world that we might be the most embarrassed or have the hardest time kind of bringing up with our kids. But, you know, making an open dialogue, and it starts when the kids are really young, that if the only thing they ever hear from you is turn that rot off, go play outside, then you're not really making a bridge for them into the world of media, and it becomes something that is sort of looked down upon or something that you don't respect. And then how are they going to come to you and tell you if they see something weird online or if they see something they don't understand? You know, later on down the road, you want to have that relationship of trust and respect where you, just like you ask questions about what they did that day, how they acted at school that day, you want to know what they saw online that day. And not just in a way to condemn it, but also with honest interest and openness. Because less and less of what they do is going to be happening under your watch. More and more of it is going to be on their own, with their own judgment, and you want to aid them in developing that judgment through conversations. And then, like I mentioned before, and like I have up here, you know, parents have a lot of things that we could do to role model a less obsessive relationship or less unconscious relationship with social media, with phones in our lives. And I do, and I have adopted these myself. I do keep my phone out of the bedroom at night because of this book. I have turned off the notifications for all the apps on my phone except for the text messaging. I do put the phone in do not disturb mode, and I plug it in the entryway of my house when I come home. I leave it in the other room when I go to sleep. And you know, thinking about what times and places you want to be screen-free and maintain a screen-free for the whole family, I think is worth considering. And then the final point that I want to leave you with, and then hopefully we'll have a good parent share and a good Q&A, is I wrote this book about parenting in the digital age in 2018, but it doesn't always have to be this way. We're only 10 years into the smartphone world, right? The smartphone and the tablet world. And we're already reacting against it. We're having this big public conversation about Facebook and about YouTube and Google and Apple and how these things are really shaping our world, maybe in ways that we don't all agree with. And I really believe that it's up to parents. Parents have a lot of moral force in this world. And other industries have been held accountable at different times in the past by advocates and activists who believed that, you know, they weren't just going to accept what they were given and try to do, try to do the best they could with it, but they wanted the industry to change and they wanted to innovate. I mean, cars for decades got away with having no, plate glass that shattered when you hit something, a steering column that impaled people, no seat belts, no anti-lock brakes. No airbags, and when they were first confronted with the news, like Ralph Nader's book in the 1960s, the car company said, well, there's no way we can change. We have these designs, and this is what the consumer wants, and we don't really want to do anything different. And so it took a lot of loud noise and activism and advocacy and anger, honestly, for the industry to change and for cars to become a whole heck of a lot safer. And then the advocacy and activism of Mothers Against Drunk Driving in the 1980s brought in a whole other area, which was actually trying to modify people's behavior. So they didn't just lobby for changes in the laws, but they lobbied for social norms to change, and for the idea of the designated driver, the idea of friends don't let friends, getting it out into media, mass media at the time, that we do have the ability to prevent these kinds of accidents, and they did go down because of that kind of work. So I think the social norm change, the changing the actual technology to make it safer to use, these are things that parents can get involved in. The cigarette settlement is another example of where, it took a very long time. It was very painful holding an industry to account because of the science and because of the research, and of course because of a lot of people's hard work. So I just leave you with that, just to think that, outside of the, all the wonderful things that technology brings us and all the possibilities, we want to have tech. We don't want to stop using technology. It's not like tobacco in the sense that we want everybody to quit it. It's a lot more like cars, or it's a lot more like food in the sense that it brings amazing things to our lives. We can't imagine our lives without it, but yet it has to change, and we're the ones who have to change it because we want a better world for our kids, right? And that is the end of my spiel where I'm talking. Thank you. So I would just encourage you to take a little while and turn to your neighbor and look at the handout, or just reflect on any of the things that we've discussed and things that might be puzzling to you or things you disagreed with, and hopefully come, speak to each other, and then, hopefully people will also be thinking of questions that they can ask me as well.
So we thought it would be really interesting for the parents that are here tonight to really reflect on your own grade bands, right? So we know we have parents that are here from high school, parents that are here from K through 3, parents that are here from K2, 3 through 5, and then parents that are here from the middle school. So what we'd like to do is ask for you to pair up with those parents that have children of similar ages. And we'd ask one of you to come up, you can come up here, I'll come down to you, and ask a question from that group. So if we can just kind of find each other, that would be great. If you're okay to just kind of, I was thinking high school can kind of pair up over there, we can do K through 5 here, and then middle school. So if you guys can kind of find each other, and then one representative from each group, and we can start the question, that would be great. So high school, K through 5, and then middle school. And then if you could just ask one of you to come up and ask a question, that would be great. Thank you for getting up. And then please don't go, because we have a Q&A session that's really rich in terms of the kinds of questions we can ask individually. And we also have a really nice raffle that we wanted to bring for you guys. So we have about 3 minutes, and then we'll ask from each grade band someone to come up and ask a question. Thank you. One more minute, and then we'd ask you to just let one person to come up and ask the question. Okay, so Bahar's going to come around. I'd like to actually nominate the high school group first. So can we get someone from the high schooler who can ask a question? And start with high school. So maybe someone from the high school group. You can just say your name and what grade in high school. Anyone from high school? Do we have someone from the middle school group? Middle school? No? Okay, so I'm going to come to the audience because I want to find the first group here. Hi, come on up. All right, so this is our first question from our first parent.
My name is Dr. John Perlman. I have a 12-year-old boy with Leanne who's at Beverly Business School in 6th grade. The question I have is, at what age or at what stage do you think it's appropriate to start discussing pornography on the internet?
Well, studies show that children are encountering inappropriate material on the internet at the age of around 9 or 10. So if you want to get in there before that, that's your time.
Before 9 or 10. How would you approach it and explain it to them?
Great question. So I think it's really important to speak honestly.
I'm sorry, the question
Yeah,
was
how do you start, right?
Right?
I think it really depends on your values and what you find most important in that conversation. So, you know, kids understand our sincerity. They understand that it's embarrassing for us, but to talk about what's problematic, what your objections are, what they might be, whether it's religious or moral, or whether it has to do with your relationships or just having a healthy sexuality, and making sure that they understand, like any media, that this comes from a place. This is not a documentary view of how people have sex, but this is made for a purpose, and it is a commercial purpose, and it is not necessarily the happiest lives of people that are in this. I mean, that would be top of mind for me. I think I have a couple more years, but getting them to think critically, just like they do a Disney princess movie, and actually hopefully connecting the dots that, like, there's a lot of images of women in our culture that are questionable and different from the women that we see in everyday life, the people that you know. And so to realize that, because a lot of times when kids are looking for sexual material, first of all, they may not be looking for it, it may just have come across it, but if they are searching because they're curious, you know, they're curious about sex, and they want to know, and it's a very healthy curiosity, and the material that's there is not made for that curiosity, and that's really the disconnect. So making sure that they also know how to get answers to questions that they do have, that there's resources online. People talk about scarletine. I recommend Amaze. They have an incredible series of YouTube videos, short videos, which is great because sometimes if you start talking about sex with kids, you're like monologuing all these different things. But with the YouTube videos, they're like specific on specific topics: puberty, body odor, sexual transmitted diseases, and whatever they're curious about, they can watch a 3-minute video. It's a good place to start. It's called Amaze, yeah.
A-M-A-Z-E.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you very much.
Sure, absolutely.
Great presentation.
Hello. Jenna? Jenna, please tell us.
My age? Kind of rude, but all right. I'm a horseman parent and a high school parent. I have 15 and 11-year-old daughters, 5th and 9th grade. So if you have a plan that's going on in your house that's working-ish, and now maybe something needs to change, how do you go about changing that without going, oh, well, I heard a presentation that was amazing, and now we're going to do this? How do you suggest going about changing things so it's not, so there's...
Well, why do you want to change?
Maybe I'm on a different side of that. I mean, I watched a lot of TV as a kid, and I turned out okay, so I think that a lot of the things we do are for different reasons. Like my high schooler spends a lot of time, some of it for school, some of it not. My younger daughter spends a lot of time. Some of the programs are educational, some of them aren't, and I kind of feel like I wish we could undo some of the internet, but we can't. I'm not as big of a proponent of technology as maybe I should be, but I feel like now maybe they're, with all this, there not being that many studies and maybe things will come out in the future, maybe I should limit more, but we have a plan right now that's working, and so.
I feel like, you know, the dandelion theory is in effect now. Like if your kids are doing great generally and they're playing outside, they're with their friends, doing well in school, they're not having trouble focusing, they're getting to bed on time, like these are the problematic areas that if you can't look for any of them, you just have a sense that maybe things could be better.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you start with thinking about what is a media interest that I could share with my kids, and how can I open up some of our time where it's a little bit more shared. Whether that's sharing an interest that you had that you loved with your kids, or letting them open something up to you, and hopefully having a little bit of that. You know, and that could be a million different things. It could be looking up a new recipe online. It could be Googling Beyonce's performance at Coachella and how the heck did she do all those dance moves. It could be look at step documentaries online, maybe learn some step moves or whatever it is. Like sharing some positive media time might be an entree into, I'd love for us to do more of this together, and I'd love to know more about what you like, and even just that, just also just pushing them to reflect a little bit on how they're using media, because there's a really big difference between like zoning out in front of some Netflix series you don't even like that much. That's not that fun. It's not that fun for adults or kids. Versus like, oh my God, I'm learning about something amazing, or I saw this amazing documentary, or I want to do my next school project on, you know, XYZ. So we could always bump it up a level.
So two more things. One, there are a lot of programs that you put on phones that will actually limit it for the kids, like the time is up.
Yeah.
You know, and you can designate, you know, Kindle you can spend more time on, but, you know, Fortnite you can't, or whatever, or social media you can't. So what are your thoughts on that? And then the other thing is, so I have a teenager who doesn't want social media because she thinks what's out there is not good, but then the connectedness is missing. Is there a way to kind of interest her in doing it as a voyeur so she can see what's going on versus once you put it out there, just everything, like are they able to, I'm trying to articulate this, like are they able to participate without, she has fear that like what colleges are going to see all these things and she's not interested in that. So,
well, I mean, I love that question. I actually hear from a lot of teenage girls that they want to spend less time on social media, which is interesting. It can be very hard once you start to stop. And also, looking without participating online is actually the source of a lot of bad feelings that come, because they come from comparison, and they come from feeling competed, and people are always, you're comparing your insides to someone else's outsides, right? So actually lurking on social media, I wouldn't necessarily recommend in terms of just knowing what's out there. If you want her to get her feet wet, you know, she could start on the more professional side of things. She can make a LinkedIn profile or an About Me page or other ways to kind of like share. I'm sure you guys have them in high school as assignments, but figuring ways to kind of communicate in that way. Or there's even like pen pal exchanges. I mean, it's in the book, but there's basically like this online community of families around the world that do home exchanges. And they have an online community, like a private place where they share and swap information. So maybe there's some, you know, specific kind of chat room or interest group that she might want to get interested in. That could be private, or that could be, you know, if she's a fan of some kind of music, or that would be one way also to engage. And then the other question that you had there was, I'm sorry, it was. Yeah, the timers.
Oh, the timers. Yeah, what are your thoughts on this?
I feel like that's a little bit of a nuclear option. I feel like you have a kid who's scoring on the problematic media use scale and they really need to cut back, then it's great. I mean, I have friends who swear by it.
I don't want to police anymore, and I don't want to set timers. Like for my 11-year-old, I'm not interested in doing that. I don't think that, maybe that's great when they're younger, but that means I'm constantly having to watch her, and if the whole point of her having downtime that's kind of mindless or whatever it is, I shouldn't have to spend my time worrying about, okay, you have 20 more seconds.
I think that's completely, you're right. I actually totally agree with you. I find it very stressful, and I don't want to be the police person. And the big picture is what you're in charge of, right? Like, are they getting to bed on time? Are they getting fed? Are they playing outside? Are they doing their homework? Again, like, that's enough to monitor, and hopefully you're building in the scaffolding for them to be autonomous and self-monitor more and more right at that inflection point. So it's a little bit off the message for you to be like filling with the dials and the knobs.
Right.
Now, if you set it all together and you say like, you know, you downloaded this new game and I'm noticing you're having really a lot of trouble stopping, would you like a little hand with that? And that's just like, let's say your husband went on a diet and you're like, do you want me to say something or do you not want me to say something? Because I can go either way, right? Because we respect each other. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Justin, and I have a 7-year-old boy, Hawthorne. And my question is more specific to like a 7-year-old boy. Is there, I know we all have different age kids, but for a 7-year-old boy, is there a specific sort of criteria of screen time, what they should have? I mean, like for me personally, so he has a phone that's not a phone, but it's a phone with games and stuff. It doesn't have a number. He has an iPad, and he also has a PlayStation 4. So I definitely see the obsessiveness with the Fortnite, which I know he's too young, but by the time I figured out what it was and he'd already downloaded it, he knows how to do it. So I'm in it now, and I just don't feel like I can go and pull it away from nowhere, because then they'll try to do it behind your back, or they'll do it with friends. So my question is, what is appropriate for a 7-year-old boy to do, to have, to do?
Great, okay. So, I referred back to this thing about priorities, like you really want to look at sleep and bedtime. Is that an issue in the bedtime table? Also, like getting to be in the bedroom at night. Also, having your attention during times that are supposed to be family times. Is he able to kind of unplug and facilitating him to do that? So it's not the rules about the screen time, but it's the rules about what we do in the family. That we play outside on the weekends, and we have our places that we go. We don't use screens at the table. We don't use screens at night. Hopefully that's a little more palatable because it's a little bit of a bigger picture. AAP, because they ask for screen time, they do say like no more than 2 hours a day up through the end of school, of elementary school as a guideline. But it really differs for different kids.
So I'll just to share what I'm doing. I don't know if it correlates with what everyone else is doing. So for me now specifically, there's no PlayStation during the week. It's just on Friday if we're not out at dinner, and then he can play on the weekends. But we are very active. We are out a lot. We do a lot of stuff. And I find that he's an only child, so we go to dinner, and we go to dinner with our friends, and he comes, and there's not always a kid there. And I try to go as long as possible, but then it is like, it's a miracle because they're, bored, and then, they have the screen, and then everything is kind of okay, and, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, it is what it is, and this is where we're at. Yep. But I feel that, I don't know, because my son is, Principal is here. She knows my son very well. He is he's really outgoing. He's really super smart, and he does great at school. He's super bright. He's nothing wrong with the curriculum, but the behavior that it gives, I think, is an aggressive behavior. But we don't have problems sleeping, so I'm now very aware of it, and I really wish that I could control it more. I mean, I gave you sort of like the parameters of where we're at with it, and it's not.
Sounds like you have a fair amount of rules, yeah.
Yes, I definitely have I definitely have the rules, but I just feel that it's, I don't know. Is there some kind of restriction that I should do on the weekends? Even more so. I mean, we do have restrictions, but I still don't like the results that I'm seeing with how obsessed he gets with the game and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the behavioral, how compelling it is hard for parents to watch. I see that a lot. Because it is so compelling and it's designed to be compelling. And so, what you're kind of faced with then is, it's really about emotional regulation and regulating up and regulating down. So like helping him build his awareness of, and some parents have behavioral rules around like, you have to be able to listen when I'm talking to you. You can't, if you have outbursts, then that means we're going to cut back. And like figuring out ways to maybe like have them check in and notice how they feel. Like, how did you feel after this, or how are you feeling right now? Can we have a little bit of like time in together, or connect around it, and sort of surround it with a little bit more support, because it is a big ramp up and a ramp down, and being prepared for that. And in the end, if you don't like it, you're still in the zone of you can take it away. But what you would like to do is have a kid who's 11 or 12 who says, hey, I'm getting too much into this game. It's taking away from other things in my life that I really care about, and I would like to, do it less. So prompting that reflection.
What's the ramp up to that? Like at 7 years old, like
asking him how he feels. And saying like, gee, you seem like you're in a really weird mood right now. Is it because, you know, why do you think that is? And how is Saturday different from Thursday?
Sure.
Just having that conversation.
Yeah, because I think that what I do is I tell him what he's feeling, as opposed to asking him what he's feeling. I'm like, you're way too aggressive. You've been playing Fortnite. You're done. You know, like so. I mean, yeah, it makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Hi, my name is Alamir Sulkin. I have a 5th grader at Hawthorne and a 5th grader at Campbell Hall. And I appreciate... Okay, hi. I appreciate the wonderful opportunities that technology in the schools gives to our kids. And my kids are pretty good. We've got how much time they're allowed to play on weekdays, which is supposed to be after homework, and on weekends. My difficulty is the homework on the devices, the studying on the devices, where the kids are not using their own creativity to figure out how they learn, but they are being fed it, like, and in ways that feel like games or feel like videos, music, vocabulary, IXL, brain pop, not brain pop, because that's, those are little bits of learning as video, but still, they're being fed the information by brain pop rather than going and researching it on their own. They're not getting the sensory involvement of, oh, I'm making my flashcards, I'm feeling the paper, I'm feeling how I write, I'm seeing the words develop under my hand. That's all right, I can talk that. It feels like not only is there a disconnect in the learning process, they're being fed the information rather than figuring it out on their own, but it's also being kept very much in the extremely stimulatory pattern of games and videos that's just perpetuating the development of these excitatory, addictive synaptic processes. And I see it in my medical students also, they're not developing the ability to sit down and focus and learn and figure it out themselves. And then it also just ends up being more and more time on the device, even though I'm doing my homework.
This is a really interesting critique. I mean, you're not the only one to raise these questions about what we're getting, what the trade-offs are as we increasingly introducing technology into the school. And what you're talking about with sort of using gamification and the same tricks that social media and video game designers use are being adapted into lesson plans, just like as you're describing. And you get a lot of engagement from that because it is engagement. I mean, it's persuasive technology is one of the descriptions of that. You know, creating these little loops of discovery and reward and sort of intermittent rewards and keeping it going. I mean, it's a real dilemma because on the one hand, first of all, you can say that you know, international comparisons of computers in the classroom find that there is no baseline improvement in the quality of learning, at least as assessed by standardized tests, based on the amount of access to computers that kids have. So we're not seeing an advantage from technifying our classrooms, at least not in that way. The applications of technology that do have educational advantages, they tend to be quite narrow and very specialized, having to do with things like you know, specifically designed cognitive tutoring. For example, Carnegie Mellon University, they were able to teach a statistics course with a much faster, with a much greater level of accuracy, with these like almost animated manipulables, like it was like an equation, and you could do the equation, you could like see it moving around in real time in a graph as you did it. So that said, I mean, I kind of understand the idea that we have tech in the classroom because this is what the workforce looks like, and kids need to be using computers, and figuring out how to do their work in that kind of environment. Because I'll tell you, what you described sounds very similar to what I live with every day as a web-based journalist. And I think increasing number of people have to learn how to concentrate in a really adverse environment, and that's exactly what we're kind of setting up our kids with. Do I think we should have exposure to a wide range of learning opportunities? Yes. Do I think that people possibly learn differently? Yeah, I do. I don't know if I have a preconceived idea about how difficult it should be to learn, but I think that's something that also is arguable. If you have to struggle to impart something or physically write it, do a little bit more effort. There have been studies that show, for example, that reading something in finer print led to more recall of the material because you have to puzzle it out a little bit harder. But I would encourage you to keep having the conversation. Talk to your kids' teachers. Talk to your kids. I mean, if they're old enough to kind of be seeking out a variety of learning opportunities, I'm sure you have the ability to offer them other kinds of out-of-school opportunities. I think, for me, some of the most interesting learning is happening in informal settings that are complementary to this kind of style. And hopefully, some of that will stick.
Hello. Good evening. My name is Eitan. I have two daughters, 7 years old and 5 years old. The older one is at Beverly right now, and my conclusions from this evening are two, thank God. One is that they are girls, and the second thing is that they are not yet at the ages of the mid-school and high school where see all the challenges. Fairly enough, we have rules, we don't have these problems with Snapchat and all the other things that So my question basically is, we barely know even on that stage that they are that young about what's going on out there. Okay, so there was MySpace, Facebook, now Instagram and Snapchat, but I know my daughter comes to me, Dad, can you get me the VTech watch? I have no idea what it is, or where can we find more information and how we can up to date, because even in 5 years from now when they're going to be at that age, what the future is going to be like, or what we should look at, with like this constantly getting out of control.
Yeah, right, so it's a great question, thank you. I talk in the book about the future of digital parenting, and it's actually coming here in the sense that we're living in a world of AI and home assistants, and little children are loving interacting with like Alexa and the Echo, and talking to it and telling it what to do. Virtual reality is coming to our schools. Within 5 or 10 years, we'll have virtual reality lessons and field trips all the time. Possibly the first virtual reality games that become really viral are going to be happening, in that time frame. The augmented reality, so the apps that are kind of like in your space. Pokemon Go is the first example where people are kind of inhabiting two worlds at once. And interacting with AI toys, where, Alexa's like this. The kids really personify, and they don't know the difference. They perform in relationships with AI intelligences, and that's affecting our emotional intelligence, because what is a person, and what are feelings, what feelings really are. What all of this adds up to me is to say, screen time is too simple. It's about a lot of different kinds of interacting with tech, and it's not just about being smarter, but it's about our values. Our values don't have to change. The tech changes, but our values don't have to change. We hope for our kids that they are autonomous, that they're respectful to other people, that they are empathetic and considerate of others, that they have their own goals, that they're self-motivated, self-directed. And we want to try to promote those things by, giving them opportunities to encounter these things and paying really close attention to what happens next. If there's anything that you don't like about it, it's a sign to cut back or do things differently. And when you ask about how are you going to know what social network your kids are going to be using in 5 years, they're the ones that are going to tell you. You have to talk to them. You have to listen to them. Right now, when they still think that you're the greatest in the world, this is when you have the chance to kind of keep that dialogue going. Yes, and then you had a question here. Sorry, you and then you. Oh, I'm sorry, over here too. So sorry, you guys go. Yeah.
1 second, he's going to talk first, he's been waiting.
Okay. It's a quick one. Actually, probably not that quick, but so basically, when do you think kids should start using cell phones or have their own cell phones? I feel like I see it all the time now. Like kids that are like in 4th grade, 3rd grade, they have them. And especially in like our community of Beverly Hills, where people have the money to buy kids a cell phone, like when should it happen? And this is probably more of a policy question, but like, what's the role of rules in school with cell phones? And should it be stricter? Should it be softer? There's pluses and minuses of both, but And my concerns are probably the obvious ones, you know, like should a fourth grader be be exposed to social media things, Facebook, Snapchat, you know, should, you know, the online bullying, all that stuff. And there's positives, obviously, too, being able to get a hold of your kid.
Yeah, really great question. So, I mean, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I don't think there's a hard and fast rule. I do think that it's giving your kid a cell phone is comparable to letting them walk around the city by themselves. You know, it maybe you could do something where it's a little bit more cordoned off, a little bit safer, like giving them a flip phone if they're younger so they can just text. I think it's going to be, I would say if I would like have my money on a technological innovation that's going to come in the next few years, is like a better version of a simple phone, a flip phone, a brick phone, something that has fewer features and is harder to break and charges for longer and is just usable for texting your friends or for your family, more like it. So that said, I mean, I like the Wait Until 8th movement that was started by Mom in Texas, where she basically asked parents in the grade to kind of sign up to say together that they were going to wait, which makes it a whole lot easier because it obviously is very much a peer effect. And 8th grade seems like a decent, I mean, it really depends on the family though. If you have a kid who's 11 years old who's moving around the city by themselves, then they need to have the phone to stay in touch. So, you know, setting rules about how they're going to use it, and a contract, you know, that like they're going to prove themselves out and prove themselves capable of that being responsible over time, and knowing that you can have spot checks if you want to, or other ways to kind of learn about, you know, what they're doing, and hope that, and continue to talk to them about what they see and what they're doing with the phone and online. But yeah, I mean, I sympathize. I know it's a really tough thing, especially if it seems like everybody has it. And then with schools, I mean, I hear a lot that schools are really struggling with this. They've gone from having no cell phone policies to parents insisting that the kids have phones, especially when things happen like Parkland, then you get a lot of parents saying that they need to be able to contact their kids all the time. And so I know a lot of teachers really struggle. There was a Gallup poll that came out recently that showed that teachers, a majority of teachers found that social media, digital life, was having a detrimental effect on kids and their physical health and their emotional health. At the same time, a plurality of teachers, not the majority, but the largest group, thought that the cell phones and the digital media were good for kids' educations. So it was a little bit of a split. But regardless of all that, the teachers had a much more negative view of the phones than the parents did. The parents in the same survey were much more likely to see the positive benefits. So I think schools are really struggling. I think we're going to see some evolution in those policies. I mean, schools are a lot more innovative and adaptive than I think people give them credit for. We've already seen schools moving from iPads to Chromebooks and you know, making all kinds of adjustments around different uses of technology. So I hope that we have, you know, new policies that come in and schools can share what works in order to have things that are structured. I know teachers right now, I talk to a lot of teachers on this question about whether or not to ban laptops or phones in the classroom, ranging from, you know, middle school all the way up to college level. A lot of the teachers said, well, if you're really good at planning your lessons, you can get them using the phones for positive things during the lesson or their own devices. You can engage them in a different way. And then other teachers said, no, absolutely not. I ban it, but I get, you know, I get in trouble for that, for banning it. You know, parents think I'm not innovative, and other teachers think I'm not innovative. So, you know, I can hope that we can have a better dialogue about it and hopefully set some more clear rules and have times and places where the phones don't have to be part of the conversation. Yes?
Me. Hi. My name is Bob Rubin. A long time ago, went to Hawthorne and to Beverly before UCLA came into my life. I have no children, and my friend here commented about his youngster, saying he's an only child, and I have no brothers or sisters. I say my whole life, not my whole life, but my whole life, I have resented being called an only child. Someone said, do you have siblings? And if I say, no, oh, you're an only child. Like I'm without something that others have. that everybody has something except I didn't get it. And I would like you to be careful when you accuse someone of that, let alone your own, if you just have one child and you're blessed with that. I think that's no less of a blessing than if you have, well, my wife is one of 7. God forbid. and an educator as well, knowing lots more about what you folks are talking about than do I. Except I also don't believe that the only way you can reach your child is if they have an $800 smartphone. But think about that in terms of owning a child.
Thank you.
That's all.
You had a
I
question.
have a quick question.
Oh, sorry. Just the woman in the red dress who was raising her hand a couple of times. I just want to make sure she gets in. Thanks, Justin. We'll get to you.
Hi, I'm Sophia Shea. We have a daughter, the 4th grade and 12th. First question is, she has many friends, but with several friends, they called, not her, we didn't give her a cell phone yet, so they called father's cell phone, and they start playing computer game. So they can get together in the computer game, right? Together fighting and on the phone for a long time. And I don't know how long because, when she's with father, they are doing. So maybe every day or about 50% of the time. Okay? So like, let's say 3 to 4 days a week. If she was doing, interacting with children in the screen of a computer game, 30 minutes or 1 hour or almost every day. Of course, she does mini classes and play dates, all balanced. But do you think that also should be shortened?
Well, I mean, it sounds like she's tying up the phone a lot, no?
Huh?
It sounds like she's tying up the phone a lot, right? She's using his phone? She's talking on his phone?
It switches to iPad.
Oh, I see. I see.
It doesn't really affect my phone.
I mean, it's social gaming, which is, it depends on what overall, you want to limit it if it's causing problems. It doesn't seem like inherently a bad thing to do with your time.
It's screen time, still like 1 hour.
Yeah. So it's still screen time.
Mm-hmm. So it's part screen time?
Yeah, it's part of screen time, for sure. Yeah, it's a video game and they're talking in the game. Yeah, I would say it's part of screen time. Yeah.
And from your contents, the lecture contents, 1 hour a day or 2 hours a day for 10 years old?
I think 2 hours a day.
2 hours a day,
Yeah.
including homework,
Yeah,
schooling.
I mean, some people don't include homework. There's different schools of thought on that. It depends on, if it's mostly, like if the homework is mostly like typing in documents and reading, it may not be exactly the same thing, but if the homework is, if they're chatting a lot during the homework, it may be more social than actually just homework. So, yeah, I would say 2 hours would be a good balance.
So including safe.
Yeah.
I see. And another question is, I studied and learned and did special education to raise the IQ as soon as she was born, and could make her IQ to 150. That is over 99.9%. One of the techniques is no screen at all, even at the restaurant. If the background TV was on, just face that way. So now screen until 5 years old, it works. But right after from 5 years old, a lot of game, computer, cell phone game, and now of course Xbox and everything. That's why, do you think that could be part of the reason she became ADHD without learning? Do you think that has some impact?
There's small amounts of evidence for a relationship between ADHD, and it goes both ways, that kids with ADHD are more prone to liking the screens, as well as that a lot of screen time may exacerbate symptoms of ADHD. It's also the case that there are certain kinds of games that are specifically developed for kids with ADHD that help them regain control. So there's a game called Neuro Racer, it's in the book, that has been shown to improve symptoms of ADHD because you're kind of teaching the kid to control their attention. But if you have somebody who struggles with attention and they're multitasking a lot, that can make it seem worse. Multitasking, like doing lots of things at once, it can make it seem worse. It can make it seem, the same symptoms can seem worse, yeah. So, you know, if it's something, it's not like a huge home run in terms of the correlation, but it's something worth looking into if you're concerned about it.
So still, there is some possibility that.
Yeah,
So
and in the book you can see more of the research and the evidence I'm talking about to kind of see for yourself, like, what the relationships are.
So you think if we cannot cut down suddenly, but by reducing the screen time, that should be better, correct? Those ADHD.
I mean, it's worth trying. It can't do any harm.
There's no research is done.
There's some doctors who've written books about their practice with individuals, but I haven't seen studies that shown like curing ADHD with taking away screens. That has not been shown. You have doctors who've written books who say, well, I tried this with my patients and it seemed to work, but that's not the same thing as having actually research studies.
So last question is, do you know any method, once you reach 150 of IQ at age of 5, you can't keep all right, you know? I know if you get 140 something, or, you know, so I will keep brushing her by reducing screen time, and of course, by getting a professional doctors and therapists. But by using screen time, is there any way, you know, to raise IQ? Or I know you gave us a mini educational website, but do you have specifically what's?
No, there's no educational apps that can raise your IQ.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Yes. Oh, sorry. Okay, now people are running.
Can you hear me?
Yes. So I have a quick question. So I have a son that's in 8th grade and twins that are in 3rd grade, and they all go to Hawthorne. I'm curious to know, when kids are social, so I'm looking at my 8th grade son, and they're at a party, a bar mitzvah, or at a wedding, and they're all just sitting there talking to each other, texting, but not having a conversation. Or they're somewhere, like we're driving in the car, and he's on his phone looking at YouTube, and I'm like, let's have a conversation. Put the phone away. I mean, I get the home part, because I'm pretty good at put your phone away, we're done. Because I'm a preschool teacher, so I'm pretty strict. But I am curious, like socially, it's really, they have no social skills. They can't look each other in the eye. They can't have conversations. So where are we going with this on that level? That's my question.
I mean, you know, if it's a problem that you observe in your own kids, that you have some ability to kind of prompt their own reflection on it. And it's hard when kids are developing social awareness. I know that as a young teenager, I spent a lot of time staring in the distance or pretending to read a book or chewing my fingernails or looking at the ground when I didn't know what to say or how to enter a conversation. And now kids have this default thing that they can do, and actually not just kids, but everybody, to avoid social interaction. That it's hard, and social interaction is hard. Being in community with other people is not the easiest thing. You know, some people are very extroverted, but even people who are extroverted, you know, don't always want to talk to everyone that's around them. So, you know, what the main thing that we can do is if we perceive that they're using it as a crutch or that it's displacing other kinds of interaction, just making sure as much as we can that they have the tools in their toolbox to break out and do something differently. I did a story last year about a summer camp, and you know, it wasn't a therapeutic summer camp, just a regular summer camp in upstate New York. And the American Camp Association has taken a really hard line on banning cell phones. In fact, this camp that I visited, they just sent a kid home to Florida for 3 days because they caught him with a phone. And they were telling me about, you know, kids that bring a decoy phone they throw away, and then they have another phone hidden. Or when the parent mailed the kid a phone, there's a phone hidden in a teddy bear. It's like all kinds of things like that. But the point being that I talked to the kids, the ages 10 to 15, and they were like feeling a lot of, the young kids, the new campers, were feeling a lot of anxiety at being away from their phone for the first time, breaking their Snapchat streaks. The veteran campers were like, told us how great it was to be able to get away for a while and just work out their problems face to face, be in the moment, not have to worry about what they were missing back home, no FOMO, you know, fear of missing out. And the counselor, I talked to a veteran counselor of girls, and she was like, this is emotional boot camp. These girls are getting a chance to interact, to work out their problems face to face, to understand the difference between like a catty remark and actually talking about your feelings and being vulnerable and open. And she sees them grow and change so much over a short period of time. And all of this is to say that I think our kids can learn a lot from having breaks. If you have the ability to enforce kind of longer breaks, and also, you know, ability to interact with different kinds of people that might be out of their comfort zone and not just their peers, older people, younger people, you know, so if it's service, if it's camp, if it's a volunteer experience, then it can be really beneficial, and it can be that kind of, that's like an inoculation from the everyday thing, because you have that ability to be in that mode, you have those skills, you know, that'll serve you well down the line. And it's not about you kind of like always swiping the phone out of their hands, but it's about them thinking, gee, like, I don't know if I like how this feels, and I have a better way of feeling, which is when I talk to people and hang out and in community with them.
Thank you.
My son is 12 years old and he's very high-taking confident and everything. His grades are okay, his bedtime is okay. But I have situation with the addiction to the electronics. He watches the Minecraft, he plays Minecraft. He has a laptop, of course, because he's at middle school, he needs the laptop, they remember, blah, blah. And then he watches Mr. Bean, he's very distant guy. But the thing is, when I say it's dinner time, even pediatricians say, you know, you don't bring it, he brings it to the dinner time. Or he gets back from school, oh my gosh, Mom, I'm really tired from the hard day. I need to sit on the laptop and watch this on the TV. He doesn't eat at all. No problem with eating. I mean, he doesn't eat at all, but he's not obsessed with anything, and obviously do that. But he's just, to me, very addicted to watch. And he's not the only kid, but I have like 24, 22, and 12. So they're at university. He's the lonely child at home. You know what I mean? He's the third Stacy. So I don't know how to deduct, how to transfer the equation that he needs less time at family time, dinner time, even at dinner time, he better forget.
I mean, how do you react when he brings it to dinner?
I stick his food away. That's it.
So, is the problem that he watches TV at dinner or that he doesn't listen to you?
He doesn't listen. He has his own mind.
So, I would suggest trying to involve him in some problem solving, in the sense that what you're doing is not working, and you're both in the family together. You have to, you know, have a happy life, and this is not working for you. You're trying to get dinner at the table. You want to talk to your son. You don't get to see him all the time, and he's, you know, explain how it feels, and ask him for his suggestion. You know. And even so in the book, like How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk, they even recommend writing it down. So together you write down a list of things you could try, and his ideas and your ideas of how can we make this better.
And on the top of my dad is being sick since December, so I'm most of the time counseling with him, so not putting special one-on-one attention. I'm still thinking like about my dad, his sickness, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So I think it's just combination of everything on the top of the...
Yeah, I hear that you know the answer and you know what needs to be done. It's just, but talking to him about it, not just in the sense of you telling him what to do, but to have him involved in that. Yeah. Cool. Okay, good. Good luck. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, one more? Sure.
So is anyone else? No? Okay.
Okay,
So,
great.
so before everybody goes, for those people that have stayed to the very, very end, we want to thank you.
Hello. Hello. So
first I want to just say, well, Lisa's setting up our wonderful raffle. Thank you so much to Anya Jimenez for sharing with us these years of research, her own personal experience, and we are really grateful to have you here in person all the way from New York.
Thank you.
Her book is being sold back out in the lobby. But we also have a special raffle tonight for those people that have stayed and are in their seats. We have 3 great raffle prizes, and let's see. The first raffle prize, the toasters are going to tell us. Go ahead, Lisa. You are all entered automatically on our fancy iPad registration entry when you came in.
Yeah, when you filled out the form, your name was entered into this for our prizes. What's the first prize?
When you checked in. When you check. And also thank you for those people that have come to Horseman for the first time, for those families that are from different schools. We're so honored to have you here at our school, so we hope you enjoyed the experience. Thanks, Hawthorne, Beverly, the high school, and our...
So the first prize is a copy of Anya's book, and she'll be The Art of Screen Time. And she is available to sign it. I think she already went out to sign copies of books. So we're with our tech magic.
And hopefully
it works. Hopefully it works, and the person is here.
Nikki? Nope.
Nope. All right, we're gonna try again. Nikki is here. There you go. Oh gosh, I'm finding it.
The next prize is a gift card from Rocco's Pizza toward a birthday party. I think it's $100. Yeah. Rocco's Pizza was excellent. They did all that pizza today.
Chaya here. Chaya, Kaya. Left? Okay. You have to be here. So you guys stay till the end. Nathan, Ruger. Hopefully, Rob. Okay, hopefully we don't have to do this too many times.
Maybe we should go.
Marcy. Marcy. He left. Well, okay.
You're going to have to let him know. You missed out on $100.
Just for all the families to know that Rocco's Pizza is generously...
Oh my God! You know what, that's not fair.
No, that's
your
fair.
parent.
I just wanted all of us to support Rocco's Pizza because they've generously done this for our event. Everything was sponsored by them, so...
I'd like to make a motion that Bahar, as somebody who's donated her time, you qualify Bahar.
Yeah.
You and your case.
Dimitri? No.
Okay, we'll do one more, and if not, Bahar wins. Yes.
Yeah.
Deborah?
Deborah?
Okay, for her.
And the next gift?
Oh, sorry. This is an experience for 4. It's a virtual reality escape room.
So I just want to say about what this is. So Virtual Room LA opened up in Hollywood, and it's an incredible example of how families can spend positive screen time together. And what it is, unlike most VR experiences where you put on a headset and you just kind of hang out by yourself and experience, this VR is the first one in the world where you can join your family and 8 people inside a virtual experience. It's amazing. So it's a very special opportunity for you to take your family and really experience what it is to do collaborative VR. Is that person here?
Russell? We thought it was a great idea.
Well, maybe you can switch it back.
saw her sneak out.
Okay, maybe 2 more, and then I'll see if anybody's sitting in a seat where
Okay, 1 more, and then we have a backup plan.
hopefully will work.
Marcella?
No.
Okay, now this might be a little bit of a race, and I want everybody to remember to be calm and cooperative.
Okay, I see what you're doing.
So there are 3 Post-it notes under seats. The first person to hold the Post-it up gets the virtual room.
This has $140 value, by the way. $140 value.
Hold the seats up. Mommy, are you sure you put the Post-its up? Yay! And you did it in such a calm and collected way. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.